Just take a moment and think about it. If someone suddenly insults you or criticizes you, what is your first reaction? Most people respond immediately, sometimes with anger, sometimes by arguing, and sometimes by trying to prove themselves right. In that moment, it feels like we have protected our dignity, but later we often realize that reacting so strongly wasn't really necessary. The truth is that a large part of our lives is filled with reactions. Someone says something to us, and our mind instantly wants to respond. Someone writes something on social media, and we feel the urge to reply immediately. If someone disagrees with our opinion, we feel like we must prove our point right away. Gradually, this habit becomes so normal that we don't even realize how often we are reacting to every small and big situation. But this is where a very deep insight is hidden. Whenever we react without thinking, we are actually handing over control of our emotions to others. Any person, any situation can trigger a reaction inside us, and in that moment, we lose our inner peace. This is exactly where the book The Power of Not Reacting introduces a powerful idea. The book does not teach us that we should always remain silent or never respond. Instead, it teaches us a mental ability that very few people develop, the ability to understand when reacting is necessary and when it is not. Most people believe that responding immediately shows strength, but this book presents a completely different perspective. According to it, true strength often lies in not letting your emotions burst out instantly, because the moment you react without thinking is the moment you lose your inner balance and control. If we look honestly at our lives, many problems arise simply because we react too quickly. Many relationships are damaged by unnecessary arguments. Sometimes we say things that we later regret, and sometimes we spend our energy on things that were never truly important in the first place. This book teaches a very deep yet simple principle. Every emotion does not require an immediate reaction. Sometimes the real power lies in pausing for a moment, observing your thoughts, and then responding with awareness. In the coming sections, we will explore the principles from this book that explain why our mind reacts so quickly and how we can gradually gain control over our reactions. Because once you learn this skill, it doesn't just change your behavior. It begins to transform your entire life. Now, the most important question arises: why does our mind react so quickly in the first place? What happens inside us that a single comment, a small remark, or even a minor situation can trigger such an immediate emotional response? The answer lies in the way our mind works. A part of the human brain operates extremely fast. This part is designed to detect threats or challenges instantly. When someone criticizes us, proves us wrong, or hurts our ego, the mind interprets it as a kind of psychological threat. And in that very moment, a strong urge to react is created inside us. That is why we often speak without thinking, jump into arguments without reflection, or express our emotions impulsively at that moment. It feels like we are doing the right thing, but in reality, we are simply acting according to the automatic patterns of our mind. The book The Power of Not Reacting provides an important insight here. It explains that most people do not control their thoughts and emotions. Rather, they are controlled by them. When a situation arises, their mind reacts instantly, and they simply follow that reaction. But if we observe carefully, no emotion is permanent. Anger, frustration, disagreement. These feelings arise for a short period of time and then gradually fade away. The problem is that we react during that brief moment. According to the book, true strength does not lie in suppressing emotions. Instead, it lies in recognizing them. When you start noticing what emotion is rising inside you, a new option appears. Instead of reacting immediately, you can pause. And that small pause creates the difference between reaction and wisdom. Most people never recognize this small gap in their lives. They believe that behaving according to every emotion is natural, but in reality, it is simply a habit, a mental pattern that can be changed. When we begin observing our thoughts and emotions, we slowly realize that we do not have to be carried away by every feeling. Sometimes simply noticing it is enough. That is where a new understanding begins. You start realizing that your emotions are not controlling you. You can observe them, but even with this understanding, there is another deeper problem. Many times we know that reacting is not the right thing to do, yet we still react. This happens because the habit of reacting has become deeply ingrained in our behavior. In the next part, we will understand how this constant habit of reacting affects our lives, and how, over time, it slowly weakens our peace, our relationships, and our mental energy.
When we begin to understand that our mind often reacts without thinking, another important question arises. What is the real cost of reacting again and again? At first glance, reacting seems natural, and it doesn't appear to cause any serious harm. But if we observe our lives carefully, we begin to realize that every unnecessary reaction slowly reduces our inner peace and balance. The book The Power of Not Reacting encourages us to understand this hidden cost. Whenever we react immediately to something, our emotions start controlling our behavior in that moment. Instead of understanding the situation, we spend more energy expressing our feelings. Many times we say words that feel justified at that moment, but later we realize that the reaction was not really necessary. Think about how many times a small disagreement has created distance in relationships. Often, conflicts grow simply because both sides react instantly. No one pauses to ask whether the situation is truly important enough to lose their peace over. When reacting becomes a habit, even small issues begin to turn into larger problems. This habit also affects our mental energy. When we react to an event, that event often stays in our mind for a long time. We keep replaying the same conversation, thinking about the same situation again and again, and imagining different responses in our mind. Gradually, this process exhausts our mind. The energy that could have been used for our goals, our work, or our personal growth begins to get consumed by unnecessary thoughts. The book also explains that the habit of reacting creates another problem: losing control. When we react to someone's words, that person unknowingly starts influencing our mind. This means our peace is no longer under our control. It becomes dependent on other people's behavior. That is why many people feel disturbed throughout the day by small situations. Someone says something in traffic, a colleague criticizes them, or an acquaintance disagrees with their opinion, and the mind immediately reacts. Over time, this habit can make us restless and emotionally unstable. But the book highlights an important insight. When we begin to observe our reactions, we start realizing that not every reaction is necessary. Many situations can calm down on their own if we give them a little time instead of escalating them immediately. From here, a new perspective begins to develop. When a person realizes that every reaction can reduce their peace, they naturally become more aware. They begin to notice which situations are truly important and which ones are not. In the next section, we will understand the first practical principle this book teaches. The idea is very simple, but its impact is powerful. Teaches us how a small pause before reacting can completely change the way we think and behave. When we begin to understand that constant reactions affect our peace and mental energy, a natural question arises. If reacting immediately is not the right approach, then what should we do instead? Should we remain silent in every situation? Should we ignore everything? The book The Power of Not Reacting answers this question very clearly. It explains that the solution is not suppressing reactions but creating a small pause between reaction and response. This pause gradually strengthens our awareness. Most people react directly to any situation. As soon as something happens, the mind instantly produces a reaction, and they behave according to it. In this entire process, there is almost no time for reflection. But if we can create a small pause in that moment, the entire situation can change. The meaning of this pause is very simple. When something affects you, instead of reacting immediately, pause for a few moments. In that moment, observe the emotion rising inside you. Is it anger? Is it disagreement? Is it simply a wounded ego? As soon as you recognize the emotion, a new choice appears before you. This is the point where the difference between reaction and wisdom begins to appear. Without a pause, the mind reacts automatically. But with a pause, you can observe the situation from a slight distance. According to the book, this small pause provides two important benefits. First, it creates a little distance between you and your emotions. When we do not react immediately, our emotions slowly begin to calm down. Feelings like anger, frustration, or disagreement often fade within a short time. The second benefit is that the pause gives us the opportunity to understand the situation. Many times, the issue we feel compelled to react to immediately is not as important as it seems in that moment. When we pause and observe, we can better decide whether a reaction is truly necessary. At the beginning, this practice may feel difficult because the mind has been accustomed to reacting instantly for a long time. But as we continue practicing this pause, it gradually becomes a new habit. When a person learns to pause before reacting, a significant change begins to appear in their behavior. Instead of arguing or reacting in every situation, they start observing whether a response is actually necessary. Many times they realize that silence or a calm response is far more effective. This is where a new phase of mental balance begins. When we learn to pause before reacting, we start freeing ourselves from the automatic patterns of the mind. But this is only the beginning. The pause helps us become aware. Yet to truly understand our mind, we must develop another important skill. In the next section, we will explore that skill, the ability to observe and understand our thoughts, which gradually makes the mind calmer and clearer.
When a person learns to pause before reacting, a new understanding slowly begins to develop within them. They start realizing that the biggest challenge in any situation is often not the external event itself, but the way their own mind interprets that event. This is where the book The Power of Not Reacting introduces another important idea: learning to observe your thoughts. Most people become so deeply attached to their thoughts that they believe whatever appears in their mind must be the truth. If someone makes a comment, the mind immediately starts generating interpretations. We might assume that the other person is trying to put us down or that they don't respect us. But often, these are simply interpretations created by our mind, not reality. Our mind produces thousands of thoughts every day. Many of these thoughts are just momentary reactions. They appear, stay for a short time, and then slowly disappear. The problem arises when we immediately accept these thoughts as facts and begin reacting according to them. The book explains that when we learn to observe our thoughts from a slight distance, an important realization begins to emerge. We start understanding that we are not our thoughts. Thoughts are simply mental events that appear in the mind and then fade away. Just as clouds appear in the sky and eventually drift away, thoughts also come and go. When a person begins to understand this, a new sense of freedom develops. Now, every thought does not force them to react immediately. If an angry thought appears, they can recognize it. If a thought of disagreement arises, they can observe it. But instead of being carried away by that thought, they can simply see it for what it is, a thought. This practice gradually creates stability within a person. Where earlier every thought immediately turned into a reaction, now the person begins to observe it. This ability to observe becomes a foundation of awareness. When we start understanding our thoughts, we also begin to see that many reactions arise without any real reason. For example, someone may say something, and our mind immediately interprets it negatively. But when we practice observing our thoughts, we realize that sometimes our interpretation itself is incorrect. The situation may not be as serious as the mind initially makes it appear. Gradually, this practice develops a calmer perspective within us. Instead of turning every thought into an immediate reaction, we begin to understand it. This brings balance into our behavior. We argue less, react less unnecessarily, and begin to see situations with greater clarity. When a person develops this habit of observing their thoughts, the mind slowly becomes more stable. But even then, an important challenge remains: emotions. Because sometimes our emotions are even more powerful than our thoughts, and they can push us to react immediately. When we begin developing the habit of observing our thoughts, we gradually realize that it is not necessary to believe every thought or react according to it. But along with this realization, another deeper challenge appears. Many of our reactions are not caused by thoughts alone. Our emotions make them far more powerful. Emotions play a very important role in human life. Anger, frustration, sadness, excitement, insecurity. These are all natural parts of our experience. The problem is not that emotions exist, but that we often react instantly under their influence. That is the moment when a person begins to lose control. The book The Power of Not Reacting explains this very clearly. It states that emotions are not permanent. They arise like waves and gradually fade away on their own. But when we react immediately, we turn a temporary emotion into a lasting consequence. For example, when someone speaks in anger, they may feel their reaction is justified at that moment. But often, after some time passes, the same person realizes that the issue was not as important as it felt at that moment. The emotion slowly fades away, but the words spoken in that moment may leave an impact that lasts much longer. That is why the book suggests that instead of suppressing emotions, we should learn to understand them. When an emotion arises within us, the first step is to recognize it. If anger is present, acknowledge that it is anger. If frustration is present, understand that it is simply a temporary feeling. As soon as we recognize our emotions, we create a small distance from them. Now we are no longer being carried away by the emotion, we are observing it. This ability to observe gradually makes us more balanced. Another important benefit of this practice is that it develops patience within us. When a person understands that emotions are temporary, they no longer feel the need to express them immediately. They know that after some time, the emotion will naturally weaken. Gradually, this understanding begins to transform behavior. Where earlier every emotional moment led to a reaction, now the person pauses and observes the situation. Many times they discover that remaining calm is far more effective than reacting. In this way, observing thoughts and understanding emotions together make a person more aware. The mind is no longer disturbed by every small situation. But within this process, there's another factor that often intensifies our reactions even more, and that is our ego. When ego becomes involved in a situation, even a simple disagreement can turn into an argument. A person begins reacting only to prove that they are right. This is a point where we must realize that sometimes the real reason behind our reactions is not the situation itself, but our own ego. When we begin to carefully understand our reactions, another deeper truth slowly starts to reveal itself. Many times, the real reason behind our reaction is not the situation in front of us, but our own ego. This is the element that can turn even a simple disagreement into an argument or conflict. A natural part of human nature wants to be understood, respected, and valued by others. There is nothing wrong with that. The problem begins when this desire becomes so strong that we feel the need to prove ourselves right in every situation. If someone disagrees with us, we immediately feel the urge to respond. The book The Power of Not Reacting offers an important insight at this point. It explains that many arguments in life are not truly about discovering the truth, but about proving who is right. When two people enter a conversation with their egos involved, the discussion stops being about understanding and turns into a competition to win. In such situations, reaction becomes almost inevitable. The moment someone feels that their opinion is being challenged, the mind begins to react instantly. The person speaks more forcefully, presents arguments, and sometimes makes the situation even more complicated. But if we step back and observe carefully, we realize that these arguments rarely bring any real benefit. Often after a conversation like this, we realize that we have spent a great deal of energy, yet the outcome has not really changed anything. The reason is simple. Our goal at that moment was not to understand the situation, but to prove that we were right. The book suggests that whenever a situation affects our ego, we should pause and ask ourselves what is truly driving our reaction. Is the situation actually important enough to require an immediate response? Or is it simply our mind wanting to prove itself right? When a person begins to understand this difference, a major shift occurs in their behavior. They stop trying to win every conversation. Sometimes they realize that the other person may continue to hold their own opinion, and that not every disagreement needs to turn into a debate. This understanding makes a person calmer and more balanced. They no longer react just to defend their ego. Instead, they begin to view situations from a broader perspective. Sometimes they realize that remaining silent or gently changing the subject can be far wiser than entering a long argument. Gradually, this perspective gives a person a sense of mental freedom. They begin to realize that winning every argument is not necessary. Sometimes the greatest victory is simply preserving your peace. As the grip of the ego loosens, a person becomes more capable of guiding their behavior with wisdom. They stop viewing every situation as something that requires a reaction and begin seeing it through the lens of understanding. With this awareness, another important ability begins to develop. the ability to recognize which situations truly deserve a response and which ones are better left alone. When a person begins to understand that not every disagreement or situation requires a reaction, another important question naturally arises. If reacting to everything is not the right approach, then in which situations is a response actually appropriate? And which situations are better left alone with a calm mind? The book The Power of Not Reacting presents a balanced perspective on this topic. It does not teach us to remain silent in every situation or to ignore everything around us. Instead, it encourages us to develop the ability to recognize which situations truly deserve our energy and response. In everyday life, many situations appear extremely important in the moment, but lose their significance after some time. For example, a casual comment, a minor disagreement, or someone expressing an opinion different from ours. If we react to every such situation, our mind gradually remains in a constant state of conflict. That is why the book emphasizes the importance of using our mental energy wisely. Not every situation deserves equal attention. Some matters genuinely require our focus, while many others are temporary and can be allowed to pass without reaction. When a person begins to realize that their energy is limited, they become more mindful. Instead of giving importance to every small issue, they start evaluating which situations truly deserve their time, attention, and response. There are certainly situations where responding is necessary. For example, when an important decision needs to be made, when clear communication is required with another person, or when it is necessary to express personal boundaries. In such cases, a calm and thoughtful response can be very valuable. On the other hand, many situations are temporary in nature. Someone might be in a bad mood, express momentary anger, or disagree with our opinion. These things often resolve themselves over time. If we react immediately to every such moment, we may unintentionally make the situation more complicated. This is where the wisdom of not reacting becomes meaningful. Sometimes choosing not to react is itself a form of intelligence. When a person recognizes that a situation is not worthy of their peace, they can simply allow it to pass. Gradually, this ability creates greater balance in a person's life. They are no longer disturbed by every small event. Instead, they focus their energy on things that truly matter. As a result, their decisions become clearer and their mind becomes more stable. When a person learns the art of knowing when to respond and when to remain silent, a new sense of freedom begins to emerge in their life. They are no longer controlled by circumstances, but become the master of their own responses. And this understanding slowly leads them toward the inner peace that every person ultimately seeks in life. When a person begins to understand that reacting to every situation is not necessary, and gradually learns to recognize which circumstances are better left alone with a calm mind, a deep transformation starts to take place in their life. This change does not remain limited to behavior alone. It slowly transforms their entire mental outlook. The book The Power of Not Reacting explains that when we begin reducing unnecessary reactions, a new kind of stability starts developing within us. Earlier, even small events would disturb our mind, but now we begin to observe situations from a slight distance. This distance is very important. It does not mean that a person becomes emotionless or stops caring about things. Instead, it means that they are no longer controlled by every emotion or situation. They develop the ability to keep their mind calm and understand what is truly happening. When this ability grows, another powerful change appears within a person's mental freedom. Earlier, a single comment from someone could ruin the entire day, but now the same person can look at the situation with greater balance. They begin to understand that every person behaves according to their own thoughts, experiences, and circumstances. With this understanding, a person starts taking other people's behavior less personally. If someone criticizes them, they no longer react instantly. Instead, they pause and consider whether there is any truth in the criticism. If there is none, they simply choose not to give it unnecessary importance. This perspective gradually brings peace into a person's life. When we stop taking everything personally, our mind becomes free from many unnecessary conflicts. We no longer feel the need to respond to every comment, and every disagreement stops disturbing us. Another important effect of this mental freedom is that a person begins directing their energy toward more meaningful things. Instead of getting caught in small arguments and emotional reactions, their attention shifts toward things that truly improve their life. Over time, this practice becomes part of a person's nature. They stop seeing every situation through the lens of reaction and begin viewing it with understanding. Their mind becomes calmer and clearer. And with this calmness, they are able to face life's challenges with greater balance. When this understanding settles deeply within a person, they begin to realize that real strength is not always found in outward reactions. Sometimes true strength lies in the quiet control we maintain over our emotions and behavior. This control gradually leads a person toward a deeper inner balance, from where life can be seen with clarity and peace. As a person slowly understands that reacting in every situation is unnecessary, this transformation begins to settle permanently within them. Situations that once triggered immediate reactions are now seen with greater calmness and clarity. This is the point where the true message of the book becomes clear. The book, The Power of Not Reacting, reminds us that many circumstances in life are beyond our control. What people think, what they say, and how they behave, these are things we cannot fully control. But there is one thing that can remain completely within our control, and that is our response. When a person deeply understands this, their entire perspective on life begins to change. They stop seeing every event as a threat to their peace. Instead, they realize that sometimes the wisest action is simply not to react. This understanding does not make a person weak. On the contrary, it makes them stronger, because real strength does not lie in words or immediate reactions. Real strength lies in the discipline that allows a person to maintain control over their mind and emotions. When we stop reacting to every small situation, several positive changes begin to appear in our lives. Our relationships become calmer and more balanced. Unnecessary arguments decrease. And most importantly, our mind gradually becomes more stable and clear. With this stability, we begin to understand life situations more effectively. We no longer feel the need to respond to every comment. Every disagreement stops disturbing us. We begin to realize that sometimes silence, patience, and self-control can be more powerful than any reaction. Gradually, this practice becomes a natural part of our personality. We begin to understand our thoughts and emotions more clearly, and our behavior becomes more balanced and mature. This is a stage where a person truly begins to experience inner peace. The essence of this entire discussion is simple. Not every situation in life needs to be answered with an immediate reaction. Sometimes the greatest transformation happens when we pause, reflect, understand, and then make a calm decision. This practice slowly helps us become more aware, balanced, and peaceful. If you found this book summary useful and learned something new from it, be sure to like the video. You can also share your thoughts in the comments about which idea from this book felt most meaningful to you. And if you would like to hear more useful book summaries and insightful ideas like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel.